Well, here we go with your FCS Phil Steele Plus tour, and it's been a solid year, 8-4 for these FCS plays. Unfortunately, last week they went 1-3 after a great 7-1 start. Chris did want to point out that Stony Brook actually led by 10 in the third quarter. They were plus 16.5 and did not cover, or it would have been a 2-2 week. But still, we tell you the records, win or lose, and now 8-4 on the year for these free FCS plays. And guess what? We got one of Chris's Ivy League plays of the week this week. 5-1 last year. You know Chris knows his Ivy League. So let's get to it. And, you know, the stuff is, I learn about these teams as I'm going through here. It's fun to see it. The Phil Steele Plus gives you all this information. But let's jump right into this game. I'm going to be reading off what Chris sent me. And the first game is Princeton and Mercer. Princeton, of course, the Ivy League team in this Ivy League Game of the Week matchup. 5-1 last year. Let's get it rolling. Now, Chris wants to point out that Mercer is 5-0 this year. That's an impressive start. They've got a first-year head coach in Mike Jacobs. It tells you that right here, first-year head coach Mike Jacobs. And last year, Mercer was actually a playoff team. So let's go take a look at last year. A lot of green there. Made the playoffs. It won in the first round. Lost in the second round to South Dakota State. South Dakota State, of course, the eventual national champ. So Mercer's a good team. They were 9-4 last year. This year they're 5-0 and ranked number 7 in the FCS coaches poll. Now the Bears are led by a stout defense. It's number 3 in the FCS. And they're actually number 1 in the FCS and holding opponents to 117 yards per game below their season average. You got to love that. And they're allowing just 224 yards per game. Look at all this green in here. You can't run the ball in these guys. 23 yards on the ground per game, 0.9 yards per carry, and they allow 46% completions. All those are outstanding stats. Now, Princeton was 5-5 last year, and Chris said that he expected them to show improvement. As last year they were plus 25 yards per game, but they haven't. They're actually minus 95 yards per game this year. Look at their offense. Their offense averages just 256 yards per game and is yet to top 280 yards. Now, let's do the quick math here. If you hold your opponent to 117 yards below their season average and they're averaging 256, that's a projection of 139 yards for the game for Princeton. You don't win a lot of games when you don't even get 200 yards offense. Now, their 2 losses on the road this year are by 15 to Lehigh and by 17 to Columbia. The quarterback Blaine Hippa has a 3-5 ratio this year. They're only completing 42% of their passes. They're going against a team that's allowing just 46% completions. Their quarterback has a 3-5 ratio. Now, Mercer already has a road win against Chattanooga, a team that also won at Wofford last week, 22-3. The AGG, check this out, and I love it. The AGG, you can use it for the NFL, the FBS, but also the FCS. The average game grade has no starting point. It only takes into account your opponent and what happened in the game, yards rushing, yards passing, both offense and defense, and total points. The AGG for Princeton so far this year, just 51.4. The AGG for Mercer, 82.1. That's remarkable. That is a 29-point difference there. Add in the home field edge, and it says Mercer by 32.7. Now, the computer also has Mercer by 18 points, and they're a 6.5-point favorite. Chris wants to let you know he uses FanDuel, and he gets his lines from FanDuel. They are great with the FCS. They put the lines up for the FCS. You can play it at FanDuel, and it's right now Mercer minus 6.5. These numbers I just showed you make it remarkable that it's minus 6.5, doesn't it? He calls for Mercer's D to lock down Princeton's offense and win by 3 touchdowns. He's calling it 31-10. After looking at these stats, I don't know if Princeton gets 10. Do you guys? The Ivy League play of the week, we're taking Mercer minus 6.5 over Princeton. All right, let's go to the revenge game of the week. And you guys know all about revenge. It's been great for the tour. You know that on the Phil Steele Tour, we've had a revenge game of the week. It's 4-0 this year. Make sure you check out the tour. Get your free revenge game. But this one is Chattanooga against Furman. So let's put Chattanooga on the left, and we're going to put Furman on the right for this game. All right, Furman on the right. And I love how you just line this up on Phil Steele Plus. All right, so let's dive into this and see what Chris says. He says UTC actually opened up 0-3 this year. Here is UTC over here, Tennessee, Chattanooga. They are on the road. But it was a brutal schedule as they faced number 7 Mercer, team we just talked about, by the way. And they played East Tennessee State. And here's East Tennessee State. They just beat last week. Now, East Tennessee State nearly upset North Dakota State earlier this year. So that's a pretty good win. And they had a 397 to 225 yard edge. I want to see a little bit about this East Tennessee State team. That's the thing about Phil Steele Plus. You just click right on it. North Dakota State. Yeah, they only lost by 3. Yards were pretty close. North Dakota State's a pretty good team. All right, that's a good win. I'm going to count that off as a good win. And they're playing Furman. Once again, we'll put Furman over here on the right. Now, Chris wants to point out that UTC quarterback Chase Artapias is a guy that is a transfer from UCLA and led the Mocs to a playoff berth last year. You see how they were doing? Now, he points out that in this game against Furman that they lost 17-14, he got injured, and they lost the game. Then he missed the rematch. Let's go take a look at the individual player stats. We have those on the FCS as well. So as you see, he did play against Furman, but got injured in this game. And then the second game against Furman, he missed it. And their quarterback hit 9-19 for 84 yards, and they lost to Furman. So it's a revenge game. They lost twice to Furman last year. Now, he says that Furman, which was a really good team last year, only has 7 starters back. And one thing I want to point out to you, if you go to the home and you go to the store right here, what you could do at the store is get the FCS magazine. It's just $25 right here. And when you get the FCS magazine, you get 2 full pages on every FCS team. It's just like the FBS magazine, except it's FCS. 2 full pages on every team. You become an instant expert. So you would find out all about what Furman lost this year. You just flip to your Furman page and read it. In fact, next week I'll show you what the 2 full pages look like. I'll give you a graphic on that. But this week, you just have to take my word for it. They have only 7 starters back from last year's playoff team. Now, so far this year, they are 2-3, and they have a loss to Charleston Southern. Now, that's the same Charleston Southern team that just lost to Western Illinois. So I say to myself, well, let's go see what Western Illinois is all about. And here is Western Illinois. They're a team that had, look at all these losses they had. In fact, Western Illinois hadn't won a game for ages. Didn't win a game in 2022. Didn't win a game in 2023. Didn't win a game this year. They beat McKendree. I don't even know who the hell McKendree is or what division they're in. And then they beat Charleston Southern. So they broke their FCS streak against Charleston Southern. And that's a Charleston Southern team that beat Furman. So that tells you a little something there. I know you can't compare that completely, but it is interesting. Now, last week, Furman was minus 13.5 against the Citadel, and they trailed 16-3 in the fourth quarter, but got 2 touchdowns and pulled out the revenge. This is a big revenge game for UTC, which lost to Furman twice last year. They're only minus 3.5. And they're more experienced and clearly the better team for this one. And take a look at the AGG as well. The AGG has got Furman on the right at 61.4. It has got Chattanooga on the left at 75.6. So even if you give them a 2-point home edge at 63.4, that's saying UTC by 12.2. And once again, they're only laying 3.5. And by the way, I want to remind you about revenge games. On the schedule with numbers, the revenge games in the FBS are 62-25, 4-0 on the free plays given out on the tour, 14-5 this year. And by the way, this chart is available for all Phil Steele Plus members. And I will be working on that in the next hour before this comes up. And when this comes up, I will have it completely done for this weekend with all the best bets for all the games. And we've even added a new column over here, which adds up the best bets for the week and gives you your total best bets. So this schedule, and all you have to do to get to it, you go to the Phil Steele Plus menu right here. And when you go to the FBS, you click on Schedule with Power Rating Forecast. Click to download. You get all these best bets. All the records are updated. Green is the best bet across the board, and this analyzes it for you. So do keep that in mind, and that will be completely updated for you. If you are a Phil Steele Plus member and you're wondering when the final update will be done, it'll be done by noon today. Noon today, I will have that up and available for you. But look at how these revenge plays have done. 62 and 25. Here's showing you two that are on the tour right now. Make sure you check out the tour if you haven't taken it already. That thing has got a double guarantee this week. All right, let's get to your next one, and it is Tarleton against Utah State. And this is a red-green game. And you guys, I love red-green games. Chris loves red-green games as well when you get a matchup edge. And the beautiful thing about Phil Steele Plus, it breaks everything down into red and green. By the way, it's Tarleton at Utah Tech. I'm not sure who the home team is here. Put Tarleton on the left and see. They are home. So I'm going to put Tarleton on the right, and we are going to put Utah Tech on the left. Now, you're probably saying, hey, who is Utah Tech? They used to be called Dixie State. They're now called Utah Tech. So that gives you a little idea about them. They've got a first-year head coach in Lance Anderson. This is Tarleton. Tarleton's Todd Whitten is in his 15th year. He's 97 and 48. You got to like that. And they're at home for this one. So let's see what Chris likes about this matchup. He says that Tarleton was 5-1 last season, or 5-1 this season. Only lost to Baylor. Utah Tech is 0-6 and minus 257 yards per game. Do you see the red here? Look at this rush defense. They're giving up 315 yards per game on the ground, 6.3 yards per carry. Now, that's dead last in the FCS. So it's a red-green game. Look at the green here. These guys, when they're not playing Baylor, have rushed for 271, 284, 212, and 224. And here's something interesting. Kayvon Britton already has 1,000 yards on the year. I love how the individual player stats are updated. Let's see what he's done so far this year. He rushed for 164, 68, 152, 273 against North Alabama, 173 and 191. He's already got 1,000 yards. Is he licking his chops to be taking this on? Look at that red, 315, 6.3. Now, Tarleton is laying 23 points here. But Utah Tech is minus 33 points per game. They're losing by an average of 33 points per game and being outgained by 257 yards per game. The Trailblazers last week, the Trailblazers lost last week to North Alabama 60-14. You want to know something interesting? They played North Alabama and beat them on the road 28-14. So they beat the team that just beat them by 46 points last week. Tarleton also has one of the best home field edges in the FCS. They're number 5 in attendance, so you got to love that. Britton should have a huge day against that poor Rundy, and he says that considering 5 of Utah Tech's 6 losses are by 24 points or more. And by the way, let me show you this. We do give you logs on Phil Steele Plus. Let's go to FCS information and go to FCS logs, and you just click here, and you get your logs updated. Let's go take a look at Utah Tech for a minute. And when you look at these logs, here's what I want to point out. These WNLs, that refers to the spread. So you don't have to do the math here. You can see what they're doing against the spread. Utah Tech has lost 5 straight against the spread. And you know my motto about streaks. You can win many times playing on a streak, and you lose only once. So let's play this streak. Let's go against Utah Tech this week. The current line at FanDuel has Tarleton minus 20.5. That's minus 20.5. Chris calls it 52-17, Tarleton State. Let's go with them as the red-green game of the week. Now we got a revenge number 2 matchup coming up for you. And by the way, a quick note for you. If you love this information, you want to have all this information for the FCS, right now it's $70. We just dropped the price for Phil Steele Plus to $89 for the rest of the year for the last 19 weeks through the Super Bowl. If you type in the code EXPERTWINS, it's just $79. Once again, you just go to the store here and you would click on Phil Steele Plus. You see how it's $89? Type that code in, you get it for $79. And just a great deal there, and get all this access to the FCS. By the way, the FCS goes all the way back Well, it's Tarleton State. They only had since 21. Utah Tech only since 21. But I'll show you on this one. Montana is playing Northern Arizona. I believe Montana's at home for this. Take a look. Put Montana over here. And they are at home. Good. Montana's at home, and they are playing Northern Arizona. Let's put Northern Arizona on the left. All right, let's see what kind of matchup. And I'll just show you here. Montana, it goes all the way back, red-green, highlighted. You want to get information on these teams since 2010. Guess what? You want to get last 6 years ATS logs. You want to see how teams do as favorites. You want to see how they do as dogs. You want to see how they do on the road. You want to see how they do against opponents. It's actually the last 7 years. It says last 6 years, but it's actually the last 7 years ATS logs. Plus, you get this year's logs. So we give you 8 years of FCS logs. You can't find that anywhere in the country. I write down the lines on every single FCS game every week for the last 8 years. No one else has done it. No one else publishes it. But Montana's out for legit revenge here after last year's 28-14 loss at NIU. The Grizzlies won their next 10 games after that loss. Here's the loss. They won their next 10 games, made it all the way to the national title game against South Dakota State. Now, this year, Montana is 4-2. They did lose at North Dakota, and they're angry. They're off a loss to Weber State. I like good teams off losses. That's always a nice thing to have. Now, NAU has been a surprise team. They're 3-3 this year in the FCS. But their big win came against Sac State, a team that was missing their top quarterback, Caden Bennett. Let's go take a look at that. I'm going to take a look at Sac State. And we're going to take a look at individual player stats. You see here out Sac State. And we're going to take a look at Caden Bennett. Yep, Caden Bennett's been out the last 3 games for Sac State, so that's interesting. And now we'll go back here, and we will take a look at Montana again. Put Montana on the right. And, another thing I did want to point out, and I forgot to point out to you, in that Mercer game, and I just want to show you everything that's available on Phil Steele Plus, which is the purpose of this whole thing. We do give you, on the FCS information, pass efficiency defense. Look at this. Mercer's number 2 in the country in pass efficiency defense, going against a weak pass team. One of the reasons we definitely like them there. Also under FCS information, you can get the average game grades updated. See who's at the top. North Dakota State's number 1 right now. That's interesting. Who's at the bottom? St. Thomas, Valparaiso. So you get right here, you could tell the strength of opponents just by the average game grades. You get a great set of power ratings when you get Phil Steele Plus. Let's go back to the FCS team pages here. And once again, we'll put Northern Arizona here. Now, this is something I want to point out about this game that Chris really likes, is that quarterback T.J. Pennington for Northern Arizona has a 7-0 ratio. That's pretty good. In fact, his backup, Angel Flores, has a 3-0 ratio. Those two guys have a 10-0 ratio this year. So why are we going against them? That's a hell of a question. Well, guess what? Both guys are out this week. How about that? So if you look at the individual player stats, Pennington got injured last week. Flores is out, so they're going to go with P.J. London. Now, London's got an 0-3 ratio this year, so that's a step down. So you're taking a third-string quarterback to take on an angry team, a really good angry team, off a loss at home, playing with revenge. Montana averages 504 yards per game on offense, with the dynamic running back duo of Eli Gilman, who's averaging 9.3 yards per carry, and Nick Osmo, who's averaging 6.3 yards per carry. NIU does average 386 yards per game, but look at this. 34 yards per game below what opponents usually allow. So they've had some weak opponents this year. Meanwhile, Montana is averaging 126 yards per game above what opponents normally allow. So you got to like that. So you got a fired up Montana team at home, playing with revenge, off a loss against a third string quarterback. The line on this one is 12.5. He's taken Montana minus 12.5 over Northern Arizona. Once again, check out the schedule on Phil Steele Plus. I'll have it updated for you by noon. If you haven't already checked out the first part of the tour, check that out. It's got a double guarantee this week. And get on board with Phil Steele Plus and get that FCS magazine if you haven't got it already. Let's hope Chris has another big winning week. 8-4 on the year so far. Let's hope that Ivy League play of the week moves to 6-1. It looks like it should this week. And thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus FCS tour.